Funny how the same mouths that laughed at you in public are now grinding their teeth in private, whispering, "Oh, so that's why we're really mad." Joke's on them. They just realized they trained the very beast that's about to outrun them. My dear chosen ones, let's talk straight. You didn't just glow up, you became the walking plot twist they never saw coming. And since this whole message sits under the banner of, "Oh, so that's what's really got them mad, and you're not going to believe it," let's rip the mask off from the first sentence. Picture this. You, standing dead center in a 5-year stretch of your life. On one side, every fake friend, energy leech, and low-vibration clown who thought you were finished. On the other side, the version of you that quietly refused to die. They were so sure the story was about them, about their power, their control, their little schemes. Meanwhile, the real headline was always you. You know why they're pressed now? Because life finally cashed the checks they've been writing with your name on them. The moment you stopped shrinking yourself to make them comfortable and started upgrading in silence, the whole equation changed. That wasn't luck. That was cause and effect with steel in its spine. Some of you are asking yourself right now, am I imagining it? Why does the energy feel so different around me? Why are people who once loved having me around suddenly annoyed by my existence? You're not imagining anything. When you were quiet, healing, minding your business, they thought you were stuck, but you weren't stuck, chosen one. You were under construction. They were playing checkers. You were learning chess. Here's the part they'll never admit out loud. People who live off manipulation and shortcuts always peak too early. Psychology has a name for it. They chase instant gratification, so their so-called success burns fast and dies ugly. While they were sprinting for attention, you were building endurance. While they were playing the main character in their own highlight reel, you were becoming the one person in the room with actual substance. For 5 long years, you weren't sleeping. You were installing updates. You were rewriting your patterns, cutting off dead weight, learning to read energy, learning to say no without shaking. They thought your silence meant surrender. It actually meant you'd switched from survival mode to upgrade mode. You didn't break. You buffered. You didn't disappear. You downloaded a whole new operating system. Before we move forward, my dear chosen ones, take a moment to fuel this mission. If this message is resonating with you, if it's reminding you of who you really are and what you're stepping into, support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Your engagement isn't just a click. It's the energy that keeps this movement alive. It helps us continue creating content that lifts you, empowers you, and pushes you into the strongest version of yourself. Every like, every subscribe, every comment helps this message reach the people who need it most. Stay with us. The next part goes even deeper. And my dear chosen ones, thank you for even being here right now. The fact that you've made it to this point, still listening, still breathing, still pushing, means you already outlived the version of you they tried to bury. Before we go deeper, if you feel this hitting home, tap like, hit subscribe, drop something in the comments. Not for my ego, but to push this message in front of the people who were told they'd never get up again. Let's answer the question that's probably sitting in the back of your mind. If I was the one doing the work, why do they look so angry now? Because here's the twist. They thought your pain was permanent, but their behavior was temporary. They assumed you were the casualty and they were the conquerors. They didn't factor in that pain, when handled correctly, turns into power. They didn't factor in that while they were laughing, you were learning. They didn't factor in that while they were performing, you were transforming. Think of it like a movie scene. The villain is laughing too loud, too long, convinced the hero is gone for good. Then the smoke clears, and there you are, still standing, eyes sharper, posture different, energy unrecognizable. That split second where the villain's smile drops, that's exactly the microsecond your enemies are living in right now. Their worst fear wasn't that you'd cry, it was that you'd come back. They're not mad because you changed. They're mad because you changed correctly. They bet on your bitterness, but you chose growth. They counted on you losing yourself, but you chose to rebuild yourself. They thought you'd spend the rest of your life trying to prove your worth to them, but instead, you quietly outgrew their entire ecosystem. And I know another question is floating in your mind. If I was the underdog all this time, why do I suddenly feel this strange confidence, like something big shifted? Because the scoreboard flipped while nobody was looking. They wasted 5 years flexing. You spent 5 years building. They invested in image. You invested in identity. Now that the dust has settled, life is putting everyone on public display. You walk into rooms differently now. Your presence has weight. Your absence gets noticed. You don't have to say, "I've changed." People feel it. Your energy doesn't ask for permission anymore. It sets the tone. That's what really bothers them. Not that you're winning, but that you're winning in a way they can't copy. Your growth didn't come from aesthetics. It came from endurance. So, my dear chosen ones, lock in with me. What you just heard is the opening act, the trailer before the real film. This is only the, "Oh, so that's why they're mad" moment. Once we break it down step by step, you're going to feel every piece of your story click into place like it was engineered for this exact season. If you're ready to walk into that truth with your head high and your power turned all the way up, drop a 99 in the comments and stay right here. You're not just watching a video, you're watching the part of your story where you stop apologizing for surviving and start owning the fact that you were the plot twist all along. Chosen ones, before we push any further into the truth behind why people are really mad and why you won't even believe the real reason, take 1 second to power this message forward. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a 77 in the comments if you're ready to step fully into the version of yourself they never saw coming. Your support isn't just appreciation. It's the momentum that allows us to keep creating messages that shake you awake, lift you higher, and remind you exactly who you've become. Stay locked in, chosen one. Because what's coming next will feel like your entire life finally making sense. Let's get started. Number 1, the real reason. Their anger exploded the moment you rose, the shift that hit them like a train they never saw coming. Nothing terrifies an enemy more than realizing the person they buried showed up to their funeral alive. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about this shift that punched them right in the ego, the one they swear came out of nowhere, the one that flipped their world upside down so violently they're still spinning. You know exactly what I'm talking about, that moment when your silence stopped looking like defeat and started looking like preparation. That moment when their confidence cracked because suddenly you didn't react the way you used to. That moment when they realized the quiet one they pushed aside had quietly become the one they should have feared from the start. See, chosen ones, here's the idiomatic truth. The tables didn't just turn. You flipped the whole damn table and walked away with the chairs. You disrupted the script they wrote you into. And now they don't know where to stand in the storyline. And trust me, nothing bruises a fragile ego harder than witnessing the person they underestimated become the person they can't outrun. Let's break it down in a way that slaps the illusion clean off their faces. For years they thought they knew you. They thought they knew your limits, your triggers, your fears. They thought you were predictable, the kind of person who bends, breaks, apologizes, or retreats when pushed too far. But chosen one, something happened. Something internal snapped into alignment. You outgrew the old version of yourself and didn't feel the need to announce it. You didn't warn them. You didn't explain it. You just became different. And now they're scrambling, asking themselves the same shocked question over and over. When did they change? How did they get this strong? And why didn't I see it? The answer is simple. because they were too busy admiring their own reflection while you were upgrading yours. They missed your evolution because their attention span couldn't comprehend anything beyond their own ego. Right now, chosen ones, some of you are wondering, why do they look nervous around me? Why does their energy shift the moment I walk in? Because your presence exposes their insecurities. Your growth highlights everything they refuse to fix in themselves. Your confidence makes their fake confidence evaporate like steam. They thought you'd fall apart, but instead you fell into place. Think of it like this. Imagine a boxer who thinks the fight is over, turns around and starts celebrating too early, only to hear the sound of footsteps behind them. That's you. That's the comeback they weren't prepared for, and the quote that fits this moment perfectly is this. They weren't scared of losing you. They were scared of what you'd become without them. And now, they're living that fear in real time. Chosen one, you didn't just evolve, you evolved quietly. And quiet evolution is the deadliest. It hits harder because it's unexpected. It stings deeper because it wasn't announced. It scares them more because they can't calculate it, control it, or compete with it. People who rely on manipulation and shortcuts depend on knowing exactly how others will respond. They thrive on predictability. So when you changed your internal programming, you short-circuited every tactic they use to feel powerful. Let me pull you even deeper into this truth, because right now you might be wondering, why do my boundaries bother them? Why does my silence irritate them? Why does my growth feel threatening to people who never cared about me? Because, my dear chosen ones, your shift removed their leverage. Your evolution stripped them of access. Your transformation blocked their old pathways to you. And people hate losing power they never earned. This shift hit them like a train because they thought you'd be stuck forever. They thought you'd stay small, stay quiet, stay dependent on their approval. They never thought you'd reach a point where you no longer needed validation, no longer needed their permission, no longer needed their presence to feel secure. They never imagined the day where the quiet one became the force in the room. And here's the part they'll never admit. Your growth exposed the truth they were running from. They didn't rise, they just hoped you'd never rise. Their whole sense of superiority depended on you staying beneath them. So when you elevated, even just a little, it felt like an earthquake. And the more you rise, the more they realize they built their confidence on the fragile foundation of your past self, a version of you that no longer exists. So, chosen ones, embrace this shift. Own it. Don't downplay it. Don't shrink to make anyone comfortable. Because the ones who are mad aren't mad at your success. They're mad that their predictions failed. They're mad that their influence faded. They're mad that the person they counted out became the one they now have to count around. You didn't just surprise them, you scared them. And not because you're dangerous, but because you're undeniable. Stay locked in, chosen ones. The story is far from over. Number 2, the silent transformation they never saw coming. My dear chosen one, let's carve this truth clean. The rise of the tyrants was never real power. It was an optical illusion built on everyone else's exhaustion. They didn't climb because they were strong. They climbed because no one had the energy left to call their bluff. And that's the line that makes every fake tyrant flinch, because deep down they know they never earned a single inch of the ground they stood on. They were inflated, not elevated. Their power was a costume. Their confidence was caffeine, not character. And their rise, nothing but a 5-year vacation from consequences, a vacation that just ended. Chosen one, imagine this in slow motion. A person climbing a staircase made of glass, shiny, appealing, impressive from a distance. They're walking confidently, chest out, chin high, bragging as they go, because the whole structure looks flawless. But what they never saw were the cracks forming beneath their own weight. cracks caused by lies, ego, manipulation, shortcuts, and every dirty move they thought would never catch up. Now picture you, the one they mocked, sweating through the hard route, building your staircase out of stone, step by step, setback by setback, lesson by lesson. You weren't flashy, you weren't loud, and you definitely weren't fast. But your steps were real, and stone never shatters the way glass does. That's the rise, and that's the fall. You want to know what made them this delusional? Why they acted so untouchable? Why they walked around like the main character in a movie no one was watching? Because tyrants always get loud when everyone else is tired. When people are drained, grieving, confused, or rebuilding, the boldest, most reckless energy tends to dominate the room. Negativity spreads fast because it takes zero skill. It's the fast food version of power, quick, cheap, but guaranteed to destroy you from the inside. These people didn't rise because they were talented. They rose because real ones like you were out here healing, trying to fix patterns they never had the courage to confront in themselves. Meanwhile, they were getting dopamine highs from deception. Psychology even has a name for it, a false elevation cycle. Their ego shoots up, their empathy drops to zero, and they start believing their own lies. They think getting away with something is the same as being untouchable. They mistake delayed consequences for immunity, and that's where the downfall seeds itself. See, consequences don't disappear. They accumulate. Every boundary they violated, every rumor they spread, every person they used to inflate their own ego, all of it stacked behind them like a shadow. And the moment life changed rhythm, the lighting hit that shadow hard. Now they can see the monster they built out of their own behavior, and it's chasing them. Chosen one, the silence that made you grow is the same silence that made them arrogant. They thought silence meant safety. They thought lack of punishment meant permission. They assumed life didn't notice. What they didn't understand is that reality collects everything, every action, every intention, every choice, and it listens far longer than they think. Then, one day, it dumps the entire folder right in their lap. And meanwhile, your rise was the opposite of theirs. It wasn't fast, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't easy. It was slow, painful, isolating, even humiliating at times, but every moment of it had weight, depth, integrity. While they spent 5 years inflating their ego, you spent 5 years developing endurance. Their rise depended on people sleeping. Your rise depended on you waking up. Think about the tyrants history exposes. The ones who thought they were too clever to catch, too charming to question, too strategic to fall. Every single one of them shared the same mindset. I'm above consequences. And every single one of them learned the same lesson. No, you're not. Your enemies? They're just running the same tired script. And now we've reached the crash, the part where every fake brick in their empire starts dropping. Their connections crumble, their credibility evaporates, their masks melt, people they use turn their backs, their tactics stop working, the energy they put out comes back and devours them. It's not revenge, it's physics. Imagine someone speeding toward a cliff in a stolen car, thinking they're winning because they're in front. That's them. You were on the slow, safe road, frustrated, hurting, doubting, but steady. When they fly off the edge, it's not because life hated them, it's because they never checked the map. Ego was driving. And here's the knockout punch. Chosen one. Their downfall isn't happening because you rose. It's happening because their rise was never real. They never planned for your comeback. They never planned for your evolution. They never planned for your intelligence, your boundaries, your strength. They thought you'd break and stay broken, but you rose slower and higher, quieter and stronger, alone but real. The rise of the tyrants was dramatic, but the rise of the chosen one, That's history, and they feel it every single time your name crosses their mind. Number 3. How their fake power collapsed under its own ego. The end of their 5-year free ride and the bill they never thought would arrive. My dear chosen ones, let's drag this truth into the spotlight with no mercy. Their 5-year free pass just got revoked, and the timing couldn't be more poetic. People who spent half a decade skating on thin ice are suddenly hearing the cracks beneath their feet, and for the first time in a long time, they're not laughing, they're sweating. Not lightly, not nervously, but the kind of sweating that happens when the mind finally understands, oh, this is real, this is happening, and I can't talk my way out of it. Picture it this way. For 5 long years, they walked around acting like life didn't apply to them, like they were exempt from consequences, immune to accountability, untouchable in their own little villain arc. They were bold because they thought no one was watching closely, no one had the courage to call them out, and no chain reaction would ever come back to bite them. But life is funny, chosen one. It watches longer than they realize and strikes harder than they expect. Their arrogance wasn't confidence, it was borrowed time disguised as invincibility. You want to know why they're panicking now? Why their voice shakes, their excuses crumble, and their ego suddenly feels too heavy to carry? Because everything they threw into the world, every lie, every betrayal, every shortcut, every manipulation, finally hit the return address and showed up at their doorstep. They spent half a decade playing with fire like children who thought flames don't burn if you ignore them. Meanwhile, you were doing the hard work, healing, growing, reflecting, fixing patterns they mocked you for even acknowledging. You were building, they were breaking. You were strengthening, they were cheating. You were rising, they were rotting. And for years, they looked at your silence like it was weakness. They thought they got away with everything because they saw you staying quiet, staying calm, staying focused. What they didn't know was that the world wasn't punishing them yet, it was measuring them. Life doesn't swing immediately, it waits. It watches who keeps choosing the wrong path, even when no one is looking. And they chose wrong every single time, over and over, without hesitation, without remorse. Now, chosen one, here's the question floating in your mind. Why now? Why all at once? Because consequences don't fall like raindrops. They fall like avalanches. They build silently, slowly, stacking layer by layer until the weight becomes too much to hold. Then everything collapses at the exact same second, and suddenly the people who thought they were beating the system realized the system was just letting them run out of rope. They had 5 years to fix themselves, 5 years to change course, 5 years to stop hurting people, stop lying to themselves, stop performing as the villain in a story that didn't need one. But instead of growing, they doubled down. They pushed harder, lied bigger, acted bolder, and life said, all right, if this is who you want to be, then let the consequences match your commitment. And now they're learning what you've known all along. There's no such thing as escaping cause and effect. There's only postponing it. Here's the part that should light a fire in your chest, chosen one. They're not just panicking because their old behavior is catching up. They're panicking because your rise is exposing how little they've evolved. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your confidence reveals their insecurity. Your elevation turns their ego into dust. You didn't have to call them out. Your progression did that for you. The moment you started rising, their mask started melting. See, they weren't afraid of consequences. Not really. What they were afraid of was the day they'd have to face you. The version of you who healed, learned, sharpened, and transformed while they were burning bridges they'd eventually need. Chosen one, understand this clearly. You were never the underdog. You were the seed. And seeds don't rise during storms. They rise after them. While they spent 5 years performing for the crowd, you were underground, preparing for a future they never believed you'd reach. Now that you've risen and they're falling, they don't know where to place their pride. And that's not karma, that's accountability. The very thing they swore they were too clever to ever face. Their free pass is over, their excuses are irrelevant, and their panic is the sound of reality finally catching up. Stay ready, chosen one. What comes next will make even more sense. Number 4. The exact moment, the energy shift, put you back in control. You survived what was designed to shatter you. My dear chosen ones, let's drag this truth into the light with the force it deserves. The reason people are really mad, and the reason you won't believe how deep it goes, is because you survived the very storm they were certain would wipe you off the map. They didn't expect you to heal. They expected you to disappear. That single line hits them harder than any clapback you could ever deliver because it exposes the core of their illusion. Deep down, every enemy who whispered on your name, every pretender who smirked behind your back, every low-quality soul who fed off your struggle, each one genuinely believed you wouldn't make it out. They didn't think you had the capacity to recover. They didn't think you had the strength to rise again. They didn't think you would ever stand up with clarity, confidence, and power. But chosen one, not only did you survive, you rebuilt yourself into someone their minds can't even comprehend anymore. And that's the part that rattles them. What was supposed to break you ended up turning you into walking proof that their cruelty failed. Sit with that. Let it sink. While they were laughing, you were learning. While they were hurting you, you were healing you. While they were playing villain in a world built on shortcuts and ego, you were becoming a force built on endurance and truth. They thought their betrayal was a blade meant to end you, but all it did was sharpen you. Imagine this, chosen one, picture a sword inside a forge. From the outside, the process looks brutal, metal heated until it glows, slammed again and again, folded, drowned, reheated, reshaped, beaten without mercy. Someone watching from afar might think that metal is being destroyed. But from the inside, every blow is strengthening it. Every moment in the fire is purifying it. Every strike is refining it into a weapon that will never break in battle. That was you. Every setback, every heartbreak, every moment you thought, this is too much, was a strike in your forging. They didn't destroy you. They refined you. They didn't break you. They built the version of you that's standing here now, unrecognizable to your old self and undeniable to everyone who underestimated you. Here's the psychological truth they can't swallow. Studies show that the people who endure real adversity and choose growth instead of bitterness come out with sharper instincts, stronger emotional intelligence, and a deeper understanding of human behavior. That combination is lethal. That's a superpower. They thought you'd crawl out of your pain weaker, but you walked out with insight that exposes them in seconds. You didn't heal in a cute surface-level way. You healed like a strategist. You rebuilt like someone whose story wasn't over yet. You reclaimed yourself with intention. Some chosen ones ask, why did being the good person always feel like a disadvantage? Why was I always the one being hurt? Because good people play the long game without realizing it. Being decent forces you to build character when others build excuses. Being loyal forces you to develop intuition when others rely on manipulation. Being honest forces you to build strength when others depend on shortcuts. They sprinted, you endured, they burned out, you leveled up. And while they mistook your kindness for weakness, life was quietly stacking advantages on your side. Your blessings feel heavy now because they're not rewards, they're acknowledgements. Every time someone tried to break you, life positioned someone or something in your path to keep you going. A sign, a moment of clarity, a conversation, an instinct that stopped you from falling too far. You didn't survive alone. You survived because you were wired for resilience from the beginning. And now you can see through people in ways that shake them. You recognize patterns instantly. You no longer tolerate what drains you. Your internal compass rejects anything that doesn't align with who you've become. That's why your circle is smaller now. Your healing exposed everything fake around you. Your growth made you incompatible with the people who benefited from your pain. Your survival proved one thing: you were never the fragile one. They were. They couldn't endure what you endured. They couldn't rise from what you rose from. They couldn't evolve through what you evolved through. Hear this with your chest, chosen one, because this is the part they wish you'd never realize. You didn't survive by accident. You survived because you were built for impact. The same battles meant to destroy you turned your spirit into something unshakable. The same experiences meant to break your confidence awakened a power so steady it makes people uncomfortable. And the same people who counted you out are now watching you walk into levels they will never reach, because they never had the depth, discipline, or courage to do the work you did. Your decency wasn't weakness, it was camouflage, and now that the truth is revealing itself, every enemy who underestimated you is learning the hardest lesson of all. You survived what they never could. Number 5, the expiration date of their consequence-free chaos. When good energy returns like a flood they never saw coming. My dear chosen ones, let's drag this truth right into the light. Good energy doesn't just come back. It comes back multiplied, amplified, reinforced, and wrapped in a force they can't calculate. And nothing shakes an enemy harder than realizing the very energy they mocked you for having is the same energy building a life they can't sabotage anymore. Here's the quote that hits them where it hurts. They mistook your kindness for weakness, but all it did was make your comeback unstoppable. That's the part burning them alive from the inside out. The fact that everything you poured out is coming back with interest, and now they can't block, interrupt, or dilute a single drop of it. Chosen ones, let's make something clear. They swore you were getting nothing. They genuinely believed your quiet good deeds were wasted. They laughed at your loyalty. They rolled their eyes at your patience. They smirked when you chose empathy over ego. They thought you were playing a losing game because their mindset could never understand long-term returns. Meanwhile, life was stacking good energy for you like a silent billionaire investor placing stocks in your future behind the scenes. Every time you chose integrity when pettiness was easier, a deposit was made. Every time you walked away instead of fighting for validation, another deposit. Every time you healed instead of hurting back, another deposit. And now the payout is hitting your life so loudly that the people who doubted you are choking on the echo. Some of you are asking, why now? Why didn't any of this happen when I needed it the most? Because, chosen one, good energy doesn't bloom in chaos. It blooms in clarity. You weren't denied, you were being developed. The timing didn't fail you, it protected you. Imagine planting a seed in bad soil during a storm. Would it grow? No, it would drown or rot. Your blessings waited for the moment when your mind was stable, your boundaries were solid, your standards were high, and your self-worth was no longer negotiable. The life you're stepping into required the version of you that learned discipline, learned detachment, learned patience, learned discernment. That's why it's happening now, because now you can handle it, honor it, and maintain it. Meanwhile, your enemies are learning the hardest lesson of their lives. Energy is a boomerang. Not magic, not mysticism, just simple cause and effect. They threw out disrespect like it was free. They spread lies like it was harmless. They manipulated like there'd never be a cost. They played with your heart like emotions didn't have weight. And now everything they launched is looping right back at them with perfect accuracy. That's why they're angry. That's why they're confused. That's why they suddenly want to fix things. They don't miss you. They miss the energy they drained for free. While they were creating chaos, you were creating value. Your good energy didn't just return, it returned multiplied because the world finally shifted into alignment with your growth. Think of it like this. You spent years pushing a boulder uphill while everybody else chose the downhill slide. And now that the slope has flipped, your momentum is carrying you forward while they're tripping over their own shortcuts. Chosen ones, hear this deeply. You are not lucky. You are aligned. Your glow-up is not random. It is earned. It is the result of years of choosing the harder route, the honest route, the disciplined route. Good energy doesn't reward perfection. It rewards consistency. And you, despite everything thrown at you, stayed consistent with your values. That's why doors are opening that were welded shut before. That's why opportunities are appearing out of thin air. That's why your confidence hits different now, because it isn't borrowed, it's built. And of course, the enemies don't understand it. Their math isn't mathing. They can't figure out why you're rising after everything they tried. They can't understand why your glow is brighter after your darkest chapters. They can't comprehend how you became stronger after breaking. But you know exactly why. Good energy is not linear. It compounds. It doesn't return quietly. It returns with force. My dear chosen ones, everything you sent out, the patience, the kindness, the loyalty, the sincerity, it's all coming back like a tidal wave, knocking down every limitation you once thought was permanent. And the best part? The very people who swore you'd never reach this season now have front row seats to watch you thrive. Good energy doesn't just return. It comes back with friends. And right now those friends are showing up everywhere in your life. Number 6. The comeback. They never believed you'd survive. My dear chosen one. This is the part of the story where the enemy's smile fades, their confidence cracks, and their stomach drops. Because this is where they finally understand the silent terror of someone who levels up off the grid. You were their worst nightmare long before they realized it. While they were assuming your absence meant defeat, you were underground, rebuilding yourself into a version they simply cannot handle. And trust me, the realization is hitting them harder than any confrontation ever could. See, people like them only understand noise. They measure worth by visibility. If they can't see you grinding, if they can't monitor your moves, if they can't track your progress, they assume you've stopped evolving. They confuse quiet with empty. They mistake stillness for stagnation. They think silence equals surrender. But my dear chosen one, your silence was the forge, the heat, the training ground. It was never the end. It was the reboot. Let me paint the picture for you with brutal clarity. A fighter never shows the world how many hours they spent training in lonely gyms lit by flickering bulbs. They don't broadcast every bruise, every rep, every setback. They prepare behind closed doors, out of sight, away from noise, because the reveal only matters when the work is done. The real fighters reappear when they're sharp enough to slice through doubt with a glance. That's you, the silent fighter, the quiet riser, the unseen threat. While they were tap dancing for attention, pretending their ego was a personality, you were putting yourself through a private boot camp they couldn't survive for a single hour. They thought you disappeared. They thought you fell off. They thought life broke you. But what really happened? You shut the world out long enough to realize your real opponent wasn't them. It was the outdated version of yourself, and you beat that version like your life depended on it. That's why you move differently now. That's why you no longer flinch at the things that once shook you. That's why your boundaries aren't made of paper anymore. They're steel. You walk with a posture that wasn't gifted. It was earned. You speak with a clarity forged in nights people like them never had to face. The old you would have reacted. The new you observes. The old you absorbed blows. The new you dodges them without trying. And they feel it. Oh, chosen one, they feel it deeply. The same people who used to believe they had access to your inner world now realize they can't read you at all. You turned into a psychological maze they can't navigate. You became unpredictable, unreachable, unshakable. And that terrifies them because their power only worked when they understood your weaknesses. Now, you have none they can exploit. You want to know why they're panicking? Why they're suddenly irritated, uncomfortable, or strangely hostile toward you? Because deep down, they know exactly what happened. You evolved past their reach. They hoped your quiet season meant you were spiraling, but instead, it meant you were regenerating. Their nightmare didn't come from your downfall, it came from your resurrection. And chosen one, let's address the question that's probably been floating in your mind. Why did my silence bother them so much? Because silence is unpredictable. It removes their advantage. When they can't see your next move, they lose control. They fear the unknown, and you became the unknown. Your silence forced them to face themselves, and they didn't like what they saw. People with shallow foundations collapse when the world stops watching. But you expanded, you stabilized, you rewired your entire operating system. You upgraded from who you were into who you were meant to be, and none of it required their validation. That's why they're twitching. That's why they're confused. That's why they suddenly hate the quiet they once mocked. Because now the quiet belongs to you, and the power too. They expected your silence to be your burial. They didn't know it was your laboratory, your upgrade chamber, your war room, the place you rebuilt your mind, sharpened your instincts, and learned how to move like someone who doesn't need applause to keep going. My dear chosen one, your comeback isn't loud. It's undeniable. And the enemy can't survive the version of you that walked out of that silence. They thought you were sleeping. You were building. They thought you were gone. You were gathering strength. They thought they'd won. You were just getting started. Now watch how they tremble, because your silence was never the end. It was the warning. Number 7. Why your good energy is returning like a shockwave. My dear chosen ones, this is the moment where the story stops being theoretical and starts being undeniable. People always act bold when they think the bill will never show up. They laugh, they mock, they manipulate, and they move through life convinced they've found some secret cheat code that exempts them from consequences. But consequences don't disappear, they accumulate. And now, chosen one, those same people who spent 5 years building a fantasy world out of ego and shortcuts are getting hit with a reality check so brutal it might as well be a brick to the face. Not a gentle tap, not a warning shot. This is the kind of impact that makes even the most arrogant person freeze, blink twice, and wonder how everything fell apart so suddenly. Let's pull the curtain all the way back. These individuals, your doubters, your users, the ones who treated your kindness like weakness and your silence like surrender, they truly believed their cardboard kingdoms were real. They strutted through life, bragging about successes they didn't earn, relationships they didn't respect, and victories built on deception. They acted loud, confident, untouchable. But here's the twist they never planned for. The louder the ego, the harder the crash when truth finally kicks the door down. Chosen one, you've got to understand something. They didn't think consequences applied to them. For 5 years, they repeated the same reckless behaviors like a broken record. Every lie felt like a victory. Every boundary they crossed felt like a thrill. Every moment they stepped on you felt like elevation. Because in their minds, you were the stepping stone, not the story. They fed their delusion daily, stacking it higher and higher like an unstable tower, and now they're watching it collapse piece by piece. Reality didn't just show up, It brought receipts, amplifiers, and a spotlight. And don't be fooled. This collapse isn't random. It's the result of everything they chose to ignore. They built connections on manipulation. They built confidence on comparisons. They built their identity on being louder, not stronger. And like all hollow structures, it only takes the slightest shift for everything to crumble. The irony? They spent years thinking they were ahead, when in reality they were just burning time, destroying credibility, and setting themselves up for the downfall they're living through today. What's hitting them hardest now isn't just the consequences, it's the realization. It's waking up and finally seeing that every win they bragged about was nothing but smoke and self-deception. It's watching people walk away because the charm wore off. It's noticing the silence where applause used to be. It's feeling the weight of their own choices suffocating them in ways they never expected. And chosen one, the part that has them shaking, is this. The truth is exposing them in real time, and they can't hide from it anymore. Some of them are replaying every moment they underestimated you, every time they mocked your growth, every time they talked down on your name, every time they treated your loyalty like a disposable item. And what makes the consequences burn even deeper is realizing you were the stable one. You were the grounded one. You were the one building something real while they built illusions that couldn't withstand the slightest shift. Your discipline highlights their chaos. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your maturity highlights their childishness. And no, chosen one, this isn't revenge. It's simply reality balancing itself out. You didn't have to sabotage them. You didn't have to expose them. You didn't have to lift a single finger. Life did the work for you. Their own actions pulled the trigger. Their own choices built the trap. Their own ego supplied the rope. They were too distracted by their own reflection to notice they were digging their own hole deeper every day. Meanwhile, here you are, elevating, progressing, becoming someone they never believed you could be. And that contrast, that's what's really hitting them. It's one thing to face consequences. It's another to face consequences while watching the person you underestimated rise higher than you ever imagined. So listen, chosen one, this moment you're witnessing isn't random. It isn't accidental. It isn't petty. It's simply life catching up to everyone. You're not rising because they're falling. They're falling because they never truly rose. And now they're learning that fantasy doesn't survive reality. And reality just decided to collect the debt. Number 8, the hidden upgrade you built, while everyone counted you out. The chosen one always looks like a nobody, until the curtain finally rips open. My dear chosen one, nothing rattles an enemy harder than realizing the nobody they dismissed was just the version of you warming up. Let's talk about this reveal they never prepared for. The one hitting them so brutally, they're still trying to convince themselves it's not real. They thought you were finished. They thought the version of you they saw in your lowest season was the final draft. They assumed the quiet, overwhelmed, invisible phase was your permanent identity. They didn't know they met you in your rehearsal season, not your premiere. And now that you're stepping into your reveal, they're stuck between pretending they always believed in you or disappearing before you notice how hard they misjudged you. Chosen one, here's the hard truth. People with shallow vision mistake your quiet season for your whole story. They don't recognize depth because they only understand noise. They don't recognize potential because they only understand performance. They don't recognize transformation because they only understand things that happen in public. So when life pushed you into isolation, reflection, silence, they laughed. They thought the mountain wasn't moving. They didn't realize it was storing pressure. Imagine a volcano. From the outside, it looks harmless, calm, quiet, almost forgotten. But underneath is heat, pressure, motion, transformation. that was you. Your enemies stood there mocking the stillness, thinking nothing was happening. Meanwhile, the pressure inside you was building into something they'd never be able to outpower. And when you finally erupted into your new self, the lava blocked every path that used to lead back to you. They can't approach you with old tactics. They can't talk to you with old tones. They can't treat you with old expectations. You melted the bridges they once used to step on you. What really fries their circuits is this. They expected your struggle to destroy you because that's exactly what would have destroyed them. They don't have your wiring. They don't have your resilience. They don't have your ability to rebuild yourself from scraps. They collapse when unsupported. You rebuilt while carrying your own weight. They cling to validation. You learn to breathe without applause. That's why your rise looks impossible to them. They can't comprehend strength that was forged in silence. They watched you lose people, opportunities, stability, direction, and they snickered. They assumed each loss was confirmation that you were fading. They didn't understand that loss was sculpting you. They saw breaking. They didn't see rebuilding. They saw setbacks. They didn't see strategy. They saw silence. They didn't see self-mastery. Their minds aren't designed for evolution. They're designed for comfort, and comfort kills clarity. So while you were sharpening, they were sleeping. While you were evolving, they were stagnating. While you were restructuring, they were recycling the same tired patterns. Chosen one, your nobody season wasn't punishment. It was camouflage. You were hidden so you could grow without sabotage. You were kept low so your reveal would hit harder. The quiet was protective, not destructive. You were being prepped, not punished. That's why your return feels unreal to them. You speak with a calmness they can't imitate. You carry a presence they can't replicate. You glow with a peace they can't manufacture. Your energy leveled up so much that people who once talked over you now stumble over their words, just trying to approach you. And now your enemies are stuck in the most humiliating realization. They bet against the wrong person. They confused your silence for surrender. They mistook your sadness for the ending. They thought your breakdown was the whole story. Plot twist. Your breakdown was just the prologue. The reveal is the real narrative, and they're not the main characters anymore. You are. Hear this clearly, chosen one. You always look like a nobody until the reveal hits. People never recognize a rising force until it's already standing over the ruins of what tried to hold it down. And now that you've stepped into your reveal season, every doubter, every mocker, every undercover hater is realizing they should have stayed humble because you were never the underdog. You were the plot twist they didn't read ahead for. And now, my dear chosen one, it's time to land this part of the story. You've seen the shift, you've felt the change. And now you're stepping into the chapter where you no longer wait for validation or look back to see who's watching. Their consequences are not your entertainment. Their downfall is not your assignment. You rise because it's your time, not because they fell. If this hit you in the chest where it needed to, drop a 77 in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs the reminder that their reveal season is loading. Stay locked in. The next truth goes even deeper. Number 9. How the nobody phase became your ultimate reveal. My dear chosen ones, let's tear the mask off this moment with both hands, because this is the part of your story that hits them right in the soul. The part they hoped you'd never understand. The nobody phase. The era where you felt invisible. The chapter where your light dimmed, your circle shrank, and your name fell silent in rooms where it was once whispered loudly. They assumed that season defined you. They assumed that was your final form. They assumed the quiet meant collapse. But chosen one, what they never realized is that your nobody phase wasn't the end of your story. It was the loading screen for the version of you they were never meant to handle. See, when you stepped into that quiet season, your enemies, the jealous ones, the insecure ones, the ones who fed off your uncertainty, thought life had finally proven them right. They believed you were done, defeated, irrelevant. In their minds, your silence meant they'd won. They thought your isolation was punishment, not preparation. They thought your absence was weakness, not recalibration. That's how shallow their understanding was. People who rely on attention for their identity never understand those who can grow without an audience. But chosen ones are different. You evolve where nobody claps. You build where nobody watches. You grow where nobody thinks to look. Your power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from becoming something worth seeing. And here's the idiom that describes your journey perfectly. You were the dark horse in a race they didn't even know you were running. While they were parading around like they'd already crossed the finish line, you were behind the scenes mastering your stride, strengthening your stamina, and rewriting your entire mentality. By the time the world looked back, you weren't behind. You were charging forward with momentum nobody could match. Let's talk about the psychology behind this, because chosen ones often ask themselves, why did I have to feel so invisible? Why did it seem like nobody understood me? Why did I feel so alone? Here's the truth. Your nobody phase stripped you of dead weight. It removed distractions. It forced you to hear your own voice instead of the noise around you. When life separates you, it's because you're being shaped into someone separation produces. Someone sharper, someone smarter, someone more aligned with their own path. Isolation isn't empty, it's engineered. But the part they'll choke on is this. Your nobody phase worked in your favor because they underestimated you based on it. They thought your quiet season meant you weren't a threat. They thought your struggles meant you'd never rise. They thought your silence meant they had the upper hand. They didn't realize your silence was the cocoon and your return would be the wings. Picture this, chosen one. Imagine a volcano before it erupts. From the outside, it looks calm, asleep, harmless. The world gets comfortable ignoring it. The villagers build homes near it. They talk casually about how it hasn't erupted in years. They think it's safe because they can't see the pressure rising underneath. But one day, without a warning sign big enough for the untrained eye, it erupts. And in a single moment, everything changes. Your nobody phase was that volcano, quiet on the surface, power building below. And when you stepped back into your life with clarity, confidence, boundaries, and identity, the eruption shook every person who misread your silence as surrender. And now, they're scrambling, they're uncomfortable, they feel exposed. They're asking themselves, how did this happen? When did they become this strong? Why didn't we see it coming? The answer cuts deep, because they were looking for loud success, not silent evolution. They underestimated your ability to rise without validation, without applause, without permission. They forgot that chosen ones don't announce growth, they reveal it. You became the plot twist they sworn couldn't happen. You became the version of yourself they hoped you'd never unlock. Your nobody phase was the camouflage that allowed you to rebuild without interference, without sabotage, without their noise poisoning your mind. And now that you've stepped into your reveal, it's too late for them to adjust. You're already ahead. You're already transformed. You're already operating on a wavelength they can't reach. So, chosen one, understand this clearly. Your nobody phase didn't break you. It protected you. It didn't silence you, it focused you, it didn't shrink you, it shaped you. And your reveal isn't loud because it doesn't have to be. You became undeniable, you became unshakable, you became unforgettable. They're not mad that you rose. They're mad that you rose from a place they swore you'd die in. That's the real reason they can't believe what they're seeing. And now, your reveal is only the beginning. And now, chosen one, as we bring this chapter to its final breath. Understand this. Everything you've heard wasn't just information, it was confirmation of who you've become. You've seen why people are really mad, and now you know the truth they hoped you'd never decode. If this message hit home, fuel the movement by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping 77 in the comments to mark your rise. And don't forget to share this with another chosen one who needs to remember their power. Your story isn't ending here, it's only gaining momentum.